Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM this Tuesday morning. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, we're here with you all the way until around about 9:30. As ever, if you want to leave a comment for us, you can hit us up on Twitter. @OffTheBallAM is the specific Twitter feed for this show. You can always get us @OffTheBall on Twitter as well. But we're also on YouTube and Facebook as well. Leave a comment there and remember to share that with your buddies so that they can come along and join the party this morning.
Unless you have no buddies, of course.
Aww.
Which is why I don't share it, Ger.
Okay, that's a pity.
Yeah.
Surely, if anybody out there wants to be a buddy of Eoin, this is Marconi House, Diggs Lane, Dublin 2.
I get posts all the time from crappy quiz masters.
I mean, you'll happily meet them for coffee and, you know, do the Book of Kells or the Viking Splash Tour and make friends with them.
I prefer to do that stuff on my own, Ger, but thanks for the offer.
All right, there's a couple of things we want to talk to you about straight off the bat today. We're going to play some highlights from the Irish basketball team. But first, we want to talk about the return of football because it's all over the back pages this morning. It is literally the only story on the back of the Sun, for example, and certainly the UK Sun. And some people, including our own Joe Malloy, aren't ready for this.
Mourinho was speaking at UCLA ahead of Thursday's International Champions Cup meeting with AC Milan.
With the squad as you have now, would you be confident of challenging for the title next year? As it stands now, with no more new players?
I don't answer to your question.
May I ask why?
Can we keep the questions on the tournament, please? That's what we're here for.
Are you getting everything you wanted out of this trip so far?
No.
Oh my God. Welcome back, Joe.
One of the worst things to happen to Manchester United in a long time. Really, like he's just poisoned. The football is poisonous. Everything about it is awful. He's about to wave Martial off into the sunset. That's going to come back and haunt him.
We were just discussing it in the office earlier on. When do we think, at what point this season he's going to go?
It does sound like he's setting things up to get out of there, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Pay me off.
I, for one, am greatly looking forward to months and months and months of Manchester United fans getting to the point where they're almost as miserable as Jose Mourinho. It must be so frustrating to support a football club that has seen such great times over the past 2 decades, and then to see this grown man behaving like a 2-month-old.
Welcome to real life, Manchester United fans. This is what it's like for fans of every other team in world football, with the exception of Real Madrid. Even Barcelona had that long period where they were really meaningless until Messi arrives. And, you know, that's kind of what life is like.
It is.
Everybody else.
It's reality. It is reality, and I see Mark McCadden writing in the Star this morning that it's September 2019 when Jose Mourinho will finally surpass his first stint at Chelsea, and this will become the longest stint he'll have at a club. He's not going to make it to September 2019. It will be a miracle at this point if he survived the entire season, unless for some reason Ed Woodward kind of indulges in Mourinho's sulking behaviour and says, do you know what, actually, Jose, to make you a little bit happier, here's £300 million, do what he will. Even then, I'm not even sure Jose Mourinho would kind of succumb to the idea of a smile.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably loads of managers out there who Man United could get who would probably go back to the style of play that Manchester United feel like they need and want. Arsene Wenger, maybe. Somebody like that, say.
Well, that would be... When Joe talks there about Anthony Martial kind of biting Manchester United in the ass, imagine if Arsene Wenger did the same thing to Arsenal. But, like, this is proof, I think, yesterday that perhaps... Not proof, but it strengthens the idea that the way Manchester United have played under Jose Mourinho has been some sort of railing against the transfer policy, against the perceived support that he's been getting from above. This idea that they're not ready to win a Premier League title, that he hasn't got what he wanted from the tour. It's clearly Jose Mourinho offloading the blame in a very subtle way.
Not subtle at all.
Sorry. in a way that's not using too many words. And yeah, it's not subtle at all. But come on, like questions only on the tour, please.
Yeah.
Like, do you think you're going to win the league? You can't ask that question. What's that about?
No, I mean, like, do you think you're going to win the league is also I guess the only way it's interesting is because he says it's not, he can't answer it. And even then it's not interesting. It's like, Come on. The newspapers are full of crappy transfer stories today.
Yes, they are.
We'll bring you some of them a little bit later on as well. Do you want to play one more video before we get into the newspapers and before I tell you what's coming up today? So yesterday we showed you 3 superstars of Irish underage basketball dunking. We have another superstar performance to bring you through some of the highlights of here as well. So look for number 9. This is another Cork star of basketball. This is David Murray, playing for the Ireland under-18, scoring 32 points and 15 rebounds. This is the European Championships. He's from Neptune Basketball Club in Cork. Obviously a powerhouse of Irish basketball, and a place we've done a bit on the show before. But yeah, this is the type of stuff we like to see, right?
Absolutely. You know, we've got... after all our dunking yesterday, it's good to see a few layups, a few old-fashioned layups. What age should we say this is, under 18?
Yeah, so this is the Ireland under-18 men. It's up against Monaco, 80-71. We won that game. Like,
the rebounding here is almost the most impressive thing. Like, you can clearly see he's giving up a few inches on everybody else, and he's still managing to catch those offensive rebounds, which is that's an incredible performance right there, just from the highlight reel.
Should we be playing Gaelic football, says Tommy. You can do that in the winter.
We were corrected on Twitter yesterday, I see, by Aidan O'Shea saying, nah, a lot of people can dunk at that age.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you know, we got a little bit too excited yesterday.
Well, look, hang on a second. Aidan O'Shea might be able to dunk at that age, but for the rest of us mere mortals, it's still a very impressive feat, right?
Yeah, well, I was absolutely baffled by what I was watching yesterday. I was like, this is incredible.
Irish people dunk at that age?
Well, you see, that's the thing. That's the point I was trying to make yesterday. We're a short nation. Dunking, 3 different people dunking in one under-18s match is something to be impressed by.
Yeah, things look different when you're Aidan O'Shea's size. So Ireland are off tomorrow. That's Wednesday. They play their final group game on Thursday against Moldova, and it looks like they should be through to a semi-final unless Monaco beat Moldova and Ireland lose to Moldova on Thursday, which obviously is unlikely to happen. If we do make a semi, it'll be on Saturday, and either against Kosovo or Cyprus, who are the 2 tournament favourites. So a come from behind underdog victory for the Ireland under-18 basketball team would be pretty good.
It would be, yeah, absolutely. It'd be good to start representing on the international stage once again. I know the women's team have done pretty well over the last decade, but to have a men's team as well going toe-to-toe with international teams would be a good thing as well.
Yeah. One last, there you go. Tasty enough. There you go. So watch 3-time basketball Ireland slam dunks for the Irish under-18s in the European Championship. That was our original tweet. That's the norm for a lot of 17, 18-year-olds in clubs all over the country. White man can jump, he says. Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Another Irishman can jump, which is an incredible thing to think.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So a few good full forwards in the making there, Ger.
Or maybe we're going to get good at basketball.
Yes, I would like to think. I would like to think that not everything revolves around the GAA.
Ah, come on, you're from Kerry, of course it does.
Well,
basketball was just to make you good at football.
Yeah, but that's only in Kerry. If the other 31 counties could kindly take their beasts and leave them in basketball and leave all the small guys play Gaelic football, that would be great.
You'd be happy enough with that. There's one more thing. We're obviously going to have Tommy Walsh with us a little bit later on. It's going to play a quick video there, but hang on. So Tommy Walsh is going to join us around about 8:10 to preview the weekend's hurling, and also to tell us the story of the mystery behind why he would wear different boots in Croke Park, as revealed exclusively by Jackie Tyrrell on the show last night. Goulding's Cork. We were going to bring you this yesterday, but we decided it was strong enough to hold on to today. So Cork football has gone through a bit of a strife, and not quite a civil war, but certainly it's going to be a long, cold winter in Cork football. And hopefully people like Daniel Goulding stepping forward and explaining what they think should happen will actually help ease that process. Kaiser, this is the remarkable story of a Brazilian footballer, Tom Markham, is going to join us. He's one of the producers of this brilliant documentary, which is just being released around about now. And it's the story of a footballer who managed to get transferred amongst all the top clubs in Brazil and potentially even some European clubs.
Potentially is the correct word. Potentially,
without actually ever playing any meaningful football, never kicking the ball. Anyway, so he'd come on and get injured, and then he'd be injured for a while, and then he'd get transferred.
Or he'd get into a brawl with fans. He would always find a way to wriggle his way around not playing. I think about 7 of his grandmothers died, and he did his Achilles tendon about 20 times.
Right, okay.
And
but like, we're literally talking about the top level of Brazilian football.
Yeah.
Like he was transferred and lived the life of a high-flying Brazilian footballer in the 70s, 80s and 90s. So you can imagine what kind of a lifestyle that was in Rio.
Yeah.
A lot of beach shots in the documentary.
A lot of beach shots in the documentary. A lot of suggestive language. A lot regarding drugs, particularly, and a lot of justice served and a lot of injustices served as well. But I guess he was a product of that environment at the time. So it's a great documentary. It's a really interesting story.
Yeah. All right. So that's all coming up a little bit later on. Time now for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Going to start with the Irish Independent. Mourinho demands best of Cup hero Pogba. This is, Jose Mourinho saying that he wants to see the World Cup Pogba as opposed to the Manchester United Pogba. He bears no responsibility for that, obviously. It's not like he picks the team, sets the team up. It's not like it's his job to help motivate the team, get them in condition, make the team work, pick the best team, make the players play for him, pick the team. He doesn't do any of that.
No.
It's all on Pogba. Pogba goes to the World Cup, plays really well in the World Cup. And, maybe he just respects the manager better.
He was talking about being in an insular environment in the World Cup where you're kind of contained in the World Cup atmosphere, and at Manchester United you're not. And I don't know, like the idea that outside influences could be of such an impact to one of your players would suggest that there's something lurking in the mirror there that might be a problem with your team that allows outside influences to be so detrimental.
This is the 2-week period where you should sell Paul Pogba if you're Manchester United. You will get more money than you paid for him. You don't believe that he's actually part of your future if you're Jose Mourinho. This is the bit where you walk in and you go, let's get our money back and move on and sign a bunch of other players to be his replacement.
Yes, it is. Well, you've got to do it now. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. It should have happened potentially prior to the World Cup. Also, we've seen that the World Cup doesn't necessarily matter when it comes to these transfers. That
PSG are looking at that going, I want a bit of Paul Pogba.
Well, yeah, there is that. Like pre-World Cup, his stock was quite low, and now, in a strange way, Paul Pogba is now in a far better place.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that he is one of the most expensive players in history. So, yeah, there is that point, but you would have liked to have thought that there would have been some sort of concrete rumour at this point, whereas it is still just rumours. We'll get to a few transfer rumours a little bit later on, but Juventus, the homecoming could be on. Again, what's the concrete information behind that? I'm not so sure. I also don't think Jose Mourinho will give him up. I still think that there is an element of kind of media baiting about all of this, where Jose Mourinho is just trying to poke the bear. Not that he needs to or anything. He needs to just manage him a little bit better, play him in a better position, and potentially being less critical. Like when has this worked for Jose Mourinho? When he's been really tough on a player at Manchester United, that is. Like, when has it worked?
Luke Shaw. I mean, I don't think it hasn't really been successful. Has it been successful to the point where they might be able to sell Luke Shaw? Is that like does that qualify success?
Well, Jose Mourinho poked the bear when it came to Luke Shaw so much to the point where he convinced himself that Luke Shaw was shit.
He was right though, isn't he?
No, he's not. I don't think so. Like maybe the injury.
Luke Shaw doesn't seem like he's very committed to the notion of being.
Why would you be committed to a man who has absolutely stabbed your back left, right, and centre?
Maybe be committed to the career.
Maybe. But it's kind of demoralising to be committed to a career when the man
who
controls your career is lambasting you in public.
You can easily force a move out.
Did you throw in that horrendous injury in there as well? How do you force a move out when you're that injured, that crocked, without giving up a huge portion of your wages?
I want to go back to one story on the back of the Irish Independent. Brezzy, part of Tip's ill-fated season. So it's a remarkable story coming from Michael Verney on the back of the Independent today. Niall Brezzy Breslin was helping with Tipperary's preparations under Premier Manager Michael Ryan. An outspoken mental health advocate, Breslin played a leading role in a handful of psychology sessions with the Tip senior squad alongside Jerry Hussey and Tony O'Gregan, who've worked behind the scenes in that area in recent seasons. So Jerry Hussey and Tony O'Gregan have both worked, Tony O'Gregan obviously very high profile hurler himself. Jerry Hussey is somebody who's been a successful sports performance person with the Irish boxing team going back a long period of time. Brezzy, as a sports psychologist, when did that happen?
You're asking somebody who has no idea, and I don't think there's too many people around the country who have any idea of the correct answer to that question. Say Brezzy was a top-class sports psychologist was qualified. And to be honest with you, do qualifications matter? Potentially not. Experience, perhaps, a lot more important. But potentially, say if Brezzy did have that experience, imagine if you're Jerry Hussey in that camp and you're like, why is this guy being brought in? What can he give the team that I can't? What sort of expertise does he have that I don't have? Like, I don't understand this at all. It's all very well in hindsight, though, saying, well, tip our crap now, or they've had a terrible season and it was such a stupid move. Maybe at the time it made perfect sense, but even allowing for that, it does seem like an odd choice of person.
The story's not written like he was in just giving a talk on mental health. I mean, that's the type of stuff that he does. He's obviously a mental health advocate, but
psychology.
It sounds like it was a specific sports psychology session or sessions done with the team where he was involved in trying to get them to focus on things or trying to improve the quality of their performance. So, I mean, I don't know if he's actually I don't know what his qualifications are, and that's an interesting left field choice by the Tipperary management team. And that's Chris Froome, a brilliant picture of Chris Froome. He's been tear gassed, pepper spray.
Yeah, TW1000 is the name of the pepper spray used on the cyclists yesterday. Not on the cyclists, sorry, on the farmers yesterday. And there was clearly a cloud of pepper that the cyclists decided to cycle through yesterday.
The farmers were protesting about farm subsidies being cut. I mean, that's what farmers protest about generally. And the cyclists had to cycle through. The farmers threw bales, and then the cops came along and, in typical French brutality style, just napalmed the entire area, which then the cyclists cycled through and were like, I mean, you might have been a bit heavy-handed there, cops. Like, what do we do? We're just going about our business here. Maybe they decided that we're going to pepper spray everybody, and specifically Team Sky. But
I'm surprised Dave Brailsford didn't complain about this afterwards.
I'm amazed that Dave Brailsford didn't claim that this was like a target specifically for his boys.
But the thing with Dave Brailsford is, I know he was obviously in a car somewhere, but if he got pepper sprayed, he'd be completely fine because of those relentless glasses, which I imagine are like double-plated or something. Marginal gains probably works on his eyesight as well.
There's probably a TUE you can get now to counteract the impact of
I'm sure there probably is. It is, like, I'm sure it was a very, very unpleasant moment for Chris Froome, but you can't help but saying that photograph is quite amusing.
So the Irish Times, the main section of their sports section today is Darragh Shea's column about the Super 8s, and it's kind of a where do the losers go now? So it's essentially a piece about Roscommon and Kildare, and that's everybody gets to buy a week or two ahead of the final round of Super 8s, and a bit of reflection too on the Kerry situation. But an interesting piece from Malachy Clerkin. Sky Sports, BT Sport, Virgin Media, 11 Sports, $2,000 a year is what sports fans are going to have to pay in Ireland, given the fragmentation of the sports rights market. Effectively, you're full price to get everything, and even then you might not be able to get the USPGA because that's going to be on the 11 network or whatever it is, wherever you get that on your computer. $2,000 a year, almost.
Yeah, that is an absolutely gigantic figure. I would never have thought it would be that high. Like, what's bumping that up? This is just for the sport content. This isn't for your basic packages that will be required.
Your basic packages would like, you can't get a lot of this stuff without having some basic package along the way.
Well, that's the real problem here. The problem that you can't get certain channels on with certain providers. That's been the grim step in all of this, where previously you're like, oh, well, I'm with my one provider, but I can get everything if I pay enough, and it's still expensive. But now you're actually being completely priced out of it, like to the tune of €2,000 a year, because you've got to buy multiple different providers to actually get all this stuff legally.
Yeah.
And what's this going to push consumers to do? Stream illegally, more so. So it's
a young person of my acquaintance, upon being asked around the time of the McGregor-Mayweather fight last year whether he and his friends were pooling their cash to stump up for it, looked back at me with bafflement, something almost approaching pity. Why would we pay for it, he said. We'll just find a link. We all know some young people. You're a young person.
Asking for a mate is what Malachy's article signed off with.
Yeah.
What else we got? Racing Post?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm not done.
There's literally two papers
I'm just looking at you there, yeah. So, leading lights just days after a thrilling Open Championship. Golf's biggest names are back out on the course. So, this is the European Open. Patrick Reed leads the field there. Villa 7-2 to go up with Thierry Henry at the helm. A sea of money comes for Thierry Henry. I mean, Thierry Henry's not going to get Aston Villa from the Championship in his first season, is he? It's the Championship. It's like, it's going to be grim, hard work, relentless, week in, week out.
why would you go to the Championship? Like, you're better. I know it's not necessarily a choice. No Premier League team might give him a job.
And yet, I can't help being unbelievably excited about the whole thing. It's like, Thierry Henry's coming down to Villa, this is brilliant.
Well, until the novelty becomes ridiculous.
Shut up.
And
None of your business.
The novelty is
who
actually
cares?
detrimental
I don't know, listen to a word you say.
Who's going to be your manager in League One next year?
I don't know, who cares? Maybe Thierry Henry. The Tory ban cut, but he misses King George and big rides at Goodwood. So Frankie the Tory had his ban cut from 10 days to 6 for careless riding at Newmarket. Who... A new dawn. Kieran Shannon, imagine if the worst remnants of Rule 42 were blown away in Cork. So different approaches to Rule 42, to the whole notion of the Liam Miller testimonial match not being played in Páirc Uí Chaoimh straight up. In the Times, Sean Moran is going at it from the usual forensic style. How did this actually happen? What's the genesis of the rules? Martin Brennan has a fairly similar piece in The Independent. Kieran Shannon is kind of hopeful that actually this will be the opportunity seized upon by the GAA to go, well, let's look at this. Let's actually be the forward-thinking leaders in our community and decide that if we have a venue that other people want to use, we'll facilitate them using that and grow the love and respect that people have for us by helping them to help themselves, which would be a really brilliant thing for the organisation to do right around the country. He's making the point, Sean Moran I think was making the point that there is displeasure around the country that you can't use your facilities in GAA clubs for other, you can't rent them out and you can't generate cash off them, but Croke Park centrally can rent out Croke Park for American football or Ed Sheeran or whatever and make money off that, but local GAA club in small town can't really make the full benefit of the fact that they've invested all this time and money and community effort in their facilities to get the facilities going. So, Times Ireland edition, final one for me for now. Oh, actually, sorry, Irish option was in Deal Addison. So Will Addison, Ulster's summer signing, has revealed he had a clause in his contract with Sale Sharks that allowed him to leave the Premiership club if an Irish team approached him, and apparently he'd been flirting with Ulster for a good while. And Diarmuid O'Sullivan says that Waterford will attack more under the new Cork manager, Pat Ryan. So the final one that we have is the Irish News, which Down duo keen to make up managerial ticket. Stephen Poacher has thrown his hat into the ring for the Down job. And McNamee boots for Tyrone, but Donegal's Gallagher to miss out. On Ban Gallagher, I would say Bon, but I don't have the Donegal Irish, is going to be out for the Donegal team. Yeah, good knowledge of a different dialect of Irish there. The back page of the Irish Daily Star this morning is "We're not good enough." Jose's grim warning over United title bid, and Pep says he's bored of winning. He has suggested that one day he might get bored of winning all around him and he might leave Manchester City. The fact of the matter is he is going to leave Manchester City one day, so I'm not sure how big a story that is. Jose in a sulk, says the back of the Irish Daily Mail. United manager demands cash for title charge, and pepper spray panic on tour of tears for Froome and co. And GAA are considering Miller match proposal. That's as a result of their joint statement yesterday evening. The back page of the Mirror this morning goes with Jose and Pep as well. Look away now. Jose worries he doesn't have enough firepower to bring back the title, while Pep admits that he may become tired of being boss of Champion City. The back page of the Herald then this morning is no small let-up. Dubs won't be easing off for clash with Max Day's Rossies. That's what John Small says. Like, if you're Jim Gavin, you're playing a B team. There is literally nothing to play for. You will come up against a team who's got a 7 or 6 day turnaround the next week. Like, why would you not play a B team? There is nothing to play for. It's the very definition of a dead rubber. Play the under-21s. They are the team, the O'Byrne Cup team. Yeah, definitely. Save everybody. Like, suspension, injuries, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, no let up. No, you should let up. Give yourself an extra week. It makes all the difference. The back page of The Guardian is stage fright. Thomas hit by pepper spray and made tour chaos. And The Guardian is our second last one. It's a tour de farce. Stage is halted after police take aim at protesters and hit riders with pepper spray. Today, the race really hots up. Yeah, it's in the Pyrenees today. Probably the last opportunity for GC contenders to actually overtake Geraint Thomas, actually get their hands on the yellow jersey. We're going to finish up on the Sun today, and the reason why I want to finish up on the Sun is because transfer season is here. It's proper silly season today. It's also got the best tab of the morning tea in a long, long time. The Chris Froome story.
Eiffel shower.
Yay.
That is brilliant. That is fantastic. The Chris Room story is not the one we want to focus on here because there is not one, not two, but three Sun Sport exclusives. Sun Sport exclusive 1. Off you go. Real target £60 million Lloris. So Hugo Lloris being targeted by Real Madrid this morning, looking to grab him. They're looking to take him away. Maurizio Pochettino won't settle for anything less than £60 million, which is of course a huge fee for Hugo Lloris. The thinking is now that if Real Madrid want to take him, that they might actually have to make Hugo Lloris the most expensive keeper in the world and to overtake Alisson and above the £67 million fee paid. Exclusive number 2 here in the back of the Sun is Ant set for Premier Dogfight, or for Prem Dogfight I should say. So this is Anthony Martial, who of course is set to leave Manchester United, but the only reason he will leave, or the only reason Jose Mourinho will let him leave, is if he joins a club that's not one of the direct rivals. But the Sun reported today that Chelsea and Spurs might get their hands on a man because Martial will force his way out of the club.
You can't do that anymore.
And yeah, you can't do that anymore. But by far the best exclusive on the back of the Sun is this one, although I think I've seen it elsewhere. Stunner as Blues go green. Chelsea are on the verge of signing veteran keeper Robert Green in a shock transfer. That's right, 38-year-old Rob Green, fella who fumbled the ball, could be on his way to Chelsea. That would be an astonishing move. It's been reported in a couple of other places as well. I'm not sure if it's as
their third choice goalkeeper.
Well, yeah, I guess so, but it's still mad, isn't it? No. Like the idea of the third choice.
No, we should never talk about these things.
Well, you know, I guess it might.
The type of thing that gives football stories a bad name.
I guess it might boost figures at reserve games. Like it's the novelty value of going to actually see Rob Green play would be interesting enough. That's kind of the transfer rumours in the Sun, but there's plenty of other stuff doing the rounds this morning. So we mentioned Anthony Martial at Manchester United. We talked about Pogba to Juventus and Corriere dello Sport yesterday morning.
Corriere.
Whatever, I couldn't care less. The Italian Sport newspaper did say, have opened this idea that Pogba may join because ultimately they want the best chance to become an all-time great club because you've got Cristiano Ronaldo. Who do you add to that mix that could make that team better, that could complement them? Well, Paul Pogba would be a great addition. The club may now let Pjanic go. Where was he going to go? Could he go to Manchester United? Who knows? Could it be a trade deal? Who knows? Rabiot and Milinkovic-Savic, who of course was a little bit of a disappointment from Serbia at the end of last season, could be on the move as well with regards to that transfer. That could be plan B for Juventus if Pogba falls through. The other one that Manchester United are talking about today is Willian to Manchester United. There is talk, of course, that Chelsea are willing to let him go. They're in for him in La Liga as well. But if that falls through, then Willian to Manchester United. It could be a decent replacement for Paul Pogba, considering Jose Mourinho doesn't really know where to play him. I guess you could call him that. And then another one is Ante Rebic to Manchester United. So all these stories are true, Ger. Let's not forget that. It is silly season and all these stories are true. The other big transfer story this morning, and it's becoming like a bit of an arms race in La Liga, is Cavani to Real Madrid. So ultimately, La Liga has turned into the situation now where you've lost Cristiano Ronaldo. You're not actually gaining a whole pile this summer. I saw a picture doing the rounds yesterday of like 10 years ago this week. Real Madrid signed all these amazing players. It was the summer when they signed Ronaldo and Kaká and a load more.
Yeah.
Like things have taken a bit of a downfall when it comes to the Liga transfers. It's been a poor transfer window for them. But reports this morning that Cavani could be on the way to Real Madrid. The next wonder kid to join the Premier League then could be a guy called Leon Bailey, who I'm not sure you've heard of, a fella who's played under-23 football with Jamaica. He's ready to force through a move to the Premier League. That's reported in the Sun this morning as well. Arsenal and Chelsea alerted to his possible availability. He's plays with Bayer Leverkusen. He's a winger, plays an attacking midfielder. $53 million is what the story states today. So, like, I wonder where this leak is coming from. Probably back home in Jamaica. He's got 9 goals in 38 Leverkusen appearances. Just a couple of other ones. Wilfried Zaha could be back on the move. Salako has been on the record over the last 48 hours or so saying it's time for him to go back to a big club. It was the wrong time for him to go to Manchester United, which part of me agrees with. Like Arsenal and Chelsea are who Zaha is linked with this morning. Could he go back to a top club? I think Arsenal could do a lot worse than signing Wilfried Zaha. Give him one last chance. It is a risk, but it could be a risk worth taking. A couple of other things. Wolves, of course. one of our favourite clubs, because they've done such amazing business. They tried to get in for Zinchenko, the young fullback for Manchester City. The club's actually agreed a deal worth about £16 million for Zinchenko, and Zinchenko was like, nah, I'm not going to Wolves, and he's staying to actually fight first place at Manchester City, which, fair play to the lad is what I say. In terms of confirmed transfers then, yesterday, and again, that was all silly season, but this is actually confirmed cold hard fact season, which we had 2 days ago, which of course was Malcolm joining Roma, which turned out not to be a cold hard fact at all, because yesterday he shows up at the new camp and he's now a Barcelona player, £36.5 million for the winger. He's only 21 years old, he signed a 5-year deal, and now you're looking at Ousmane Dembele looking to get the hell out of there. And then the other big confirmed transfer yesterday was Richarlison, who's joined Everton.
Okay, good stuff on. For a deal between 50 and 60 million, depending on what you read. So Jackie Tiro was on the show last night talking about how he prepares for big games.
Yeah, I would have been, and that probably would have been boxed off. Like, we trained Friday, come home Friday night, I'd probably have it boxed off at that stage, and Saturday was just chill out day then. But yeah, I would have been quite OCD, and like, the more nervous you are, the more times you check your gear bag, the more time you check your laces, the more times you check the grip on your hurl.
What studs did you wear in Croker?
Always wore studs. Always worse, unless it was a consistent the whole week, and I'd always check the weather to see if there was any rain. If there was a glimmer of rain on the Sunday, it would definitely be studs.
Because it's a hard pitch, isn't it?
It is a hard pitch, and my rule on it always was that I'll take 4 or 5 days of sore feet and blisters versus slipping and a goal coming off me. It's grand for a corner forward or a midfielder or even a wing back to slip. If I slip, it's more likely going to be a goal, so it was never even within question for me.
Because I remember seeing Richie Hogan's feet, the picture a few years ago. The blisters were rotten.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Blisters are no joke. I mean, I'd say you're in pain.
Yeah, you are, and like it's your feet. Like, many times your feet pound off the ground. Tommy Walsh flirted with an idea of wearing one boot of stud and one boot of mouldies. As you would know, Tommy would do. I don't think it'll last too long. I remember asking him, like, which foot would you wear? And he said, always turn on one foot, so that would always have the stud and the other was mouldy. So there was a bit of thought gone into it.
He operates on a level of genius I can't quite compete with.
None of us can kind of get to that level.
It's a very nice tan Jackie has. Good morning to you, Tommy Walsh. How you doing?
Good morning, lads.
Come on, tell us the story behind this.
Well, you see, the whole idea, it kind of started way back before then, Ger. As a young fella, obviously, you wear whatever boot you get, whatever your parents buy for you. And sure, that time, it didn't really matter. There were long cogs, there were short cogs, whatever. And you wore them from, 9, 10 years of age. So then I remember Liam Keown was obviously the county man in Tullaroan that time. And it was a big thing when you're on the county panel, you got a new pair of Puma Kings mouldies. And I remember, like, every year you'd probably get them, or maybe that time it was for getting to an All-Ireland final. So I remember he gave my father a pair that he had used. He must have got a new pair, and he gave him a pair that he was after using. And I used to go out into the garden, obviously shooting that time, and there was a field beside us. I was after getting a new goal post. I was after shifting it out. So I was spending all the winter out there. But I used so that your socks probably got wet anyway. But instead of wearing wellies, which your parents were probably trying to get you to wear out in the field, I used to wear these boots, and I thought they were the greatest things of all time. I used to run faster, I used to play better, so I used to love these mouldies. But then when we got the new Croke Park, you see, I think it was around 2002 when I was coming on the scene, and it was a different pitch that time where I think it was really hard or something underneath, but the grass, there was plenty of grass on it, but there was a lot of slipping and sliding going on in the early years. So they were saying, even though we're in the height of the summer, you should wear your long cogs. So I wore them in the semi-final of 2003, and I also wore them in the final, and I was took off in both matches. So I said, I'm never wearing cogs again. And I wasn't after wearing them in a good few years. And so then 2004, I flirted with the idea of wearing one of each. But you know what happened that day? I was sent off in the quarter-final against Clare. So so that put an end to all that. Back to the mouldies. But then I had a big scare. It wasn't my scare. It was 2004 semi-final against Watford. And Mick Kavanagh comes up to me before the match and he said, what boot are you wearing today, Tommy? And I said, I'm wearing the mouldies. But I forgot to tell him it didn't matter what kind of weather's out there, I was going to wear mouldies. So he said, right, yeah. And he pawned the mouldies. And was about a minute to go, and a few minutes to go, and there wasn't much in it. Probably only 2 pints. And Paul O'Brien, who's after having a great summer coming on, I think is a sub for Waterford that time. A ball came in behind me. I looked around, and here was Cavan on the ground. Paul O'Brien had a great chance of a goal, and I think our goalie saved it at the time. But yeah, that was my story with boots.
And did Michael Cavan blame you afterwards about the mouldies?
Yeah, sure, listen, we won, and there's a great picture of the two of us where you'll probably see it on Google or one of these things where we were arms around each other, and I think it was more relief that all worked out in the end than anything else. But we were great friends. We probably just had plenty of slagging and jeering after it.
Very good. So there was literally one match where you wore one boot mouldies and one boot with the cogs.
Yeah, I think so. I can't, because I'm only hearing it there now from Jackie, but I think that was the day I wore them, and it wasn't even a big long cog. It was kind of, I think Puma might have came out that time with a kind of a hybrid, if you like. It was kind of half in between, so I was going to wear one of each.
And that was why you got sent off, of course.
Yeah, obviously.
Before we talk about the weekend's games, what's the Field of Dreams behind you?
That's just a poster of Public Crow Park. I suppose, Ger and Eoin, like, to me, in my view, like, this is the most beautiful weekend in the GA calendar for inter-county hurlers. Like, for this weekend, you have 4 teams, you have 120 players, team management, backroom teams. They're dreaming of now playing an All-Ireland final. Like, that is, no matter what you go back, you can talk about tactics, you can talk about diets, you can talk about gyms. This is what everyone dreams of since they were 3, 4, 5 years of age. Like, Henry Shefflin said it in his All-Ireland winning speech in 07. Since I was a little boy growing up in Ballyhale, I dreamed of one day doing this. Tommy Dunn, he thought he'd never get there. Like, this is where we all were when we were 4 years of age, dreaming of just getting the chance to play in an All-Ireland final. 80,000 people, millions watching it. The build-up, the tickets, Micheál O'Mahertig commentating on the final. It was just, this is the creme de la creme, and I just think for this week, just my experience in playing in semi-finals, this is where you really dream that you can get there, and I just think it's a great weekend to look forward to.
So a slightly different build-up then from your perspective when you were going through it from the semi-final to the final, because like this is almost more nervous in a way, because there's like no one wants to lose a final, but losing in the semi-final, I've definitely heard people say that's the worst place to lose because you don't even get the experience of the big day.
Yeah, it's the worst, and it's more the consequence of losing than anything else. That if you lose, you have to watch everyone else prepare, you have to read the papers, you have to listen to the radio, you have to watch the television programmes, you have to see up for the match, the great crack that goes on the night before the All-Ireland, and you're not there and you're not part of it. So yeah, definitely the semi-final is a much more difficult one to lose, because at least after the final, listen, you're gutted, you're devastated, takes a while to recover, but you don't have to watch anyone else in the build-up to saying, I could be there, if I had done this in the semi-final, or if I had got in this hook or this catch, I could be there. No, the semi-final is definitely probably the hardest one to lose, Ger.
You lost one semi-final, did you, against Galway, ever?
Yeah, we lost that one in 2005. So yeah, it was a good record, but still, you know, I don't remember that came on there one day. I don't know where we were, maybe in a wedding or something like that. It was probably being shown on TG4 or one of these, and you know, I wasn't able to watch it. Like, you know, it still doesn't make it any easier that you only lost the one, and it's definitely not one you want to lose.
No, for sure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the weekend's games then. The battle in particular that Jackie picked out when he was talking about it last night was what's going to happen with Conlon, and just the fact that he's finally up against a fullback who might actually be physically capable for him, who might have the hurling smarts for him, and Dahi Burke. Is this the key battle, or are there other things that ultimately are going to decide the quality of ball going into John Conlon, and so therefore they might be just as important?
Yeah, well, it'll be a number of factors really, but like you have, I think the best hurler in Ireland at the moment, Dahi Burke. He can play the game any way you want. He can defend or he can attack. He can let you have the ball and he'll just take it back off you, or he can go out and win it in front. Depends on what he decides to do and what risk he decides to take. So I think Conlon is up against the best most physical, but best hurler even in Ireland at the moment. He has all the attributes. And then Conlan is probably one of the most in-form, along with Horgan. He's probably one of the most in-form hurlers at the moment. So that's a battle, I think I think that's why we're so excited. Like, was it Johan Cruyff said, football is a simple game, but it's very difficult to play it simple. Well, I think these 4 teams in the semi-finals, they play the game the way it should be played. It's man versus man. Yeah, you might have a few guys defending, but they'll be back up the field as quick as a flash and back up into their forward units. So I think, if anything, especially, I suppose, well, both matches really, but it's going to be you versus me. I'm going to take you on, and are you good enough to stop me? And I don't care what kind of ball goes into Conlan. Like, that Galway backline defend as a unit. Like, Daithí Burke is so good, but he's also lucky that if he doesn't win the ball, you have Mannion, you have Hanbury, you have Tuohy. They're all closing him down within, I say, 2 or 3 seconds. So I think for Conlan to succeed in that battle against Daithí Burke, he will need O'Donnell in the form that he's in, Reedy, Podge Collins. And like, sure, we all, like, this kind of Clare team we kind of grew up with these guys. We've seen him winning their under 21s as 18, 19, 20-year-olds. We've seen him winning that final in 2013. Podge was given tour de forces up in Croke Park. That great flick he did over in front of the Cusack stand, I think it was in the final. Tony Kelly just scoring left, right and centre. Shane O'Donnell, that great final he had. Like, we've seen these guys when they were so young, and then we've seen the pain of all the defeats that they're after having since. They haven't been in Croke Park. That Field of Dreams behind me, these guys probably forget what it's like. They haven't been there since 2013. And by listening to them and seeing them in interviews, it's like Croke Park is where they love going, because I suppose the wide open spaces, they're small, fast guys. So yeah, I think it's going to be just a huge battle, but there'll be a lot of man-on-man, you versus me battles out there, as opposed to kind of, sweepers and defensive systems.
In that case, you would make the Conlan versus Burke situation a bit of a 50-50, but then at the same time, if Burke is having a flyer, there is a situation where it could turn into the second half of Clare against Cork in the Munster final. So Tony Kelly comes into this game in a huge way, Tommy, especially after his performance against Wexford, doesn't he? Yeah, and I think he probably there's probably a lot of pressure put on Tony Kelly this year on, I suppose, going back to the 2013, that wonderful year he had when he was Hurler of the Year. I think Tony Kelly is after having a great year. Like, he scored 1-3 in the first day. He scored 5 or 6 points, I think, against Watford. I know he had a quite enough Munster final, but like, he was brilliant against Tipperary as well. When like I always talk about a game, it's not just won in the last 5 minutes. It can be won any stage during the game. Remember, Clare were under pressure before half time, and Tony Kelly stood up again. The last day again against Wexford, as you mentioned there, he was back to his real brilliant self. So I think Tony Kelly is having quite a good year, bar that Munster final when he was quiet. And yeah, listen, they say when he's going well, Clare are going well, but that's because the crowd feed off Tony Kelly. He's like the Brian Loans. The crowd, they get an extra 10% of a kind of a cheer or a roar, or they stand up when he gets a score. And a lot of that is to do with Shane O'Donnell as well. And I think Shane O'Donnell, the last day, we all know, Ger and I often speak about, he spoke in the Sunday game a few years ago, that we've all these coaches going around the country. They're all showing guys how to run around this goal and run around that goal, tippy-tappy, sharp passing. How many coaches in the country are showing a guy how to win the ball? Well, Shane O'Donnell, for a small guy, I'd say is pound for pound the best baller winner in the game. Give him a size and all that. He's absolutely brilliant. But this year, I felt, and I suppose a lot of the guys, the hurling people, really felt that he was doing the same thing every time. Win the ball, take on his man and try and hand pass it off, or stop and try and hand pass it off to Tony Kelly going through. But he's after changing up his game the last day, I felt. He's going around a man and a quick ball over the bar. Suddenly he has 2 points on the board. Suddenly his man is starting to doubt himself. His confidence is high. The whole team's confidence is high. You have Tony Kelly then running left, right and centre off him, and he can give the 1 or 2 passes, because the defenders don't know what to do now at this stage. Is Shane going to go around me, or is he going to pass it off? And I think it's leading to the 2 of them, I suppose, playing even better again.
That's kind of the key thing, isn't it? That those individual players have to create a sense of doubt in the direct marker, because that spreads doubt amongst the entire defence. That ultimately, Clare looked very predictable over the last number of years, and that's why they were being beaten consistently in games. That and a few bad wides at key moments in matches kind of draining the confidence from them. But if those individuals actually start scoring early, then they do have options. They can revert to a passing game. They can go short passing. They can go hand passing if they want, or they can do the individual scoring themselves. Like, that's the thing that we haven't really seen from them, where there's a variety in the game plan and a variety in what they're doing as individuals.
Yeah, definitely, Ger. And I always go back to our own experience in the 2011 All-Ireland semi-final, when we were getting the ball against Waterford on the half-back line. Every ball was just pummeled straight to the square. That's the way we had won so many times in the past. We felt that was the way forward. But Richie Hogan came in to me after the All-Ireland semi-final and said, Tommy, you're going to have to change it up, because every time you get the ball, or I suppose any of the lads in the half-back line, the cornerbacks and probably wing-backs and centre-back are probably doing the same thing, are just sprinting straight into the number 3 position to help out, because they know that's where you're going to hit it. In the final then, we just are spraying balls left, right and centre. And that's the unpredictability that you have to bring, because you're asking questions. Suddenly a cornerback or a fullback, they can't do the same thing. They can't catch a man by the jersey or stand here or stand there, because they just don't know what's going to happen. And with Shane O'Donnell now, a cornerback, for the last number of months, he's been just, right, he'll win the ball, I'll just shadow him out. We might concede a point here, he'll hand pass it off, but we'll probably have runners here to block those guys as well. But now he's getting the ball. One time he's passing off to Tony Kelly, as we've seen underneath the big stand below in was it down Cork and Páirc Uí Chaoimh. The next time he goes around him and a quick point over the bar. Suddenly a cornerback doesn't know what to do. And that leads to all kind of challenges for the opposing backline. And the Galway backline, I feel, they're brilliant at surrounding the opposing players when they get around their guy. So if they go around them the first time, well, the next time, if all the Galway boys are after you, hit it back over your head, you'll probably have a few clear guys outside you. So change it up the whole time, Ger, to keep the guys guessing. And talk about confidence, yes, definitely, because it's the crowd feed into it, and that leads the whole team to bigger performances.
Yeah, it does seem like that there is only so much you can plan for when it comes to this game, when it comes to the Galway backs anyway, because individually all these Clare forwards are so good. But the same could definitely be said when it comes to the Galway forwards and the lack of planning to a certain extent that Clare can do, because you can't just pick one Galway forward and mark them. All 6 of them are absolutely lethal.
They are on, and I think the key to the Clare guys is their midfielders, I suppose, especially Colm Galvin likes to attack a lot. I think he will have to be more disciplined. You know, you hear a lot about Paul Pogba in the World Cup, that he was more disciplined in that semi-final. I'm not sure exactly what he was doing, but it sounds good anyway. But the discipline of Colm Galvin, maybe midfield, just for this game, it mightn't help his game, but it might help the team game, because he needs to stay around the middle of the field, and the big guy Malone midfield as well, Cotton Malone, they need to stay around the middle. Why? Because if that Galway forward line gets space, we've seen what they can do. They scored 128, was it, the last day against Kilkenny. The first day in the Leinster final, Kilkenny closed down that space and they weren't quite as productive. I think 17 or 18 points they probably scored. So I think for Clare to curtail that Galway forward line, and listen, all great players are going to score. The Cannings and the Cottle-Mannions and these guys, they're in the form of their life probably this year, so they're going to score a certain amount of scores, but damage limitation with these guys is the key thing, keeping to 2 or 3 points. So I think if the midfield and if the half back line hold their structure, they will give Clare a much better chance, because the one thing you don't want forwards to do, especially brilliant forwards that Galway have, is space.
One last question on this before we go on to the other game quickly. What difference does it make that there's been a break in matches from a Galway perspective, whereas Clare have actually been rolling through and got that bit of confidence and got those kind of patterns back through the quarterfinals?
Yeah, well, I think they're both probably in a good position regards freshness point of view, Ger. As you said, Clare, they've had a 2-week break. Not as long as Galway, but they've had a 2-week break and they're just hurling probably in the form of their lives, so they just want to keep this thing going. Towards Galway, I suppose it's all about hunger at this stage. They're All-Ireland champions, they're Leinster champions, they were league champions last year, so they've won it all. The key thing to them is to stay fresh. 3 weeks is more than enough time to stay fresh, to bring the guys back down to earth, because they had, as we all know, they had a magnificent performance against Kilkenny in Thurles. Now, the key thing I would see for Galway point of view is we've seen that they can go stale. like all champions go stale because you just can't keep it going. The key to it is change up your team, freshen it up, not for the sake of it, but there surely must be someone in that Galway camp that is after putting up his hand that was on the subs bench the last day. Possibly even Conor Cooney to come back onto the team, because I think if you stay picking out the same teams, especially when you're champions, lads can get comfortable. Lads can feel like, yeah, I've done this before, I'll do it again. Because you need that edge, especially at this time of year. And often champions are very kind of, their weakest point is probably a semi-final, because they've got through all the tough matches earlier on and they think, yeah, listen, we still have it, we can still do it. And it's not as hard as we thought. It's hard, it's bloody hard. It's the hardest thing you can ever do is win championship games. And even more so this time of year, because you're playing against the best teams and probably the teams that are in the best form. So I think for Galway to come through on Sunday, I would like to see a few changes in their team sheet Friday night.
Okay, that's interesting. Just to keep things fresh and keep everybody.
And
on
not for the sake of it, Ger, just hopefully there's someone putting up their hand in training as opposed to just throwing in anyone.
Yeah, okay. The other game, it's hard for anybody to kind of get an exact handle on how the Limerick Cork game is going to go. The previous time they met, there was a sending off and the game ends in a draw. So, like, you know, you can make a case for both teams to be favourites, but ultimately a lot of this will come down to how both teams actually respond to what happens on the day.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it before, it's going to be like any one of them Rocky films where they're just going to stay punching each other until one of them wins at the end, because I don't think there will be a whole lot of defending will go on Sunday. This will be like total hurling like on Sunday, where we'll just see forwards, space, running left, right and centre, diagonal ball. They're just beautiful guys to watch, and their names, you know, they roll off your tongue. You don't even have to think about it. And I think on both sides, their forwards are their best players. And I just think for the neutral Sunday, you know, you hear lads talking about a home Tullaroan. They can't wait even to look for. There's a few lads going up to the match. You know, for a semi-final, I think that's magical. And you know, we hear all, I suppose, the negativity surrounding the Gaelic football because it's so kind of defensive and boring at the moment. You won't have any of that Sunday. There'll be no fear of that. And you know, there's great history between the teams. You had Ring versus Mackey, the great bicycle final back in the early parts of the century. Like, it's just absolutely brilliant. And we, as a neutral, I can't wait for Sunday. That's the one I'm really looking forward to.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think I kind of changed my predictions the whole time, but I think my feelings, say if I was to speak from the heart, I think Cork will win. I think just things are going well for them. Like, you have Patrick Horgan, Lehan, all these guys in the form of their lives. Like, I seen The Rock, he was talking about it yesterday, like how we don't speak about Patrick Horgan in the same light we speak of TJ and Joe. And he's right, like, because did he pass Christy Ring last year as the all-time top scorer? Or was that in Cork hurling or the whole championship? I'm not sure, but whether it was Ring or the whole championship, I don't know. But it's absolutely brilliant, because for a man to do that, like, Christy Ring was the greatest hurler of all time, and we should be speaking of him, especially the last 2 or 3 years. His scores from play, he's starting to move around the place. He's not just the free taker anymore, and he produces it every day he goes out. Big day, small day, it doesn't matter. So when you star forwards like that, you'd always give a chance to that team. And so from the heart, I will say Cork. But if I was to try and analyse it, I think Limerick probably defend that little bit better. Their half-forward line are much better at defending than, I suppose, the Cork forwards. And I think if it was to go with that kind of side of things, I'd go with Limerick. But I always go with my heart, so I think Cork.
All right, well, enjoy it. It sounds like it's going to be a cracker. Tommy, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, lads. Good luck.
Tommy Walsh with us this morning there, talking to us about what's going to happen at the weekend. So we were talking a little bit earlier on about the Michael Verney story on the back of the Irish Independent, which suggested that Niall Breslin had been part of the psychological preparation of the Tipperary team over the course of the championship. Breslyn's been in touch to say, the sports psychologists for Tip are Jerry Hussey and Tony Ogue. They brought me in for some mindfulness training. I ain't a sports psychologist. Just to clarify, I am doing a master's in mindfulness in UCD with a focus on elite sports. So mindfulness is totally different, obviously, from sports psychology. I can see how this type of story emerges and gets conflated. When you think about what the Dubs do, they have a yoga app on their phones to practice mindfulness. So obviously it's part of a lot of elite teams' preparation at the moment.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the future of this actually. See that there will be a future of that in Gaelic games, because it's obviously something very important in day-to-day life, so you'd imagine there will be a place for it in the future, so it's interesting to hear that. Okay, so last week we did catch up with Cork's man of the match in the 2010 All-Ireland football final, Daniel Goulding. Goulding is on the Electric Ireland Minor Star Awards selection panel for the 2018 Minor Championship season, alongside Michael Fennelly, Ollie Canning and Sean Kavanagh. He's also teamed up with Electric Ireland as part of the GAA This Is Major campaign to offer one lucky club or school the chance to win an exclusive training session. To enter the competition, visit Electric Ireland's Facebook page. Here he is in conversation with Owen. Enjoy. All right, I'm delighted to say that Cork legend Daniel Goulding joins us now in studio. Daniel, how are things?
Very good.
Busy life at the moment, I understand?
Yeah, busy life. Wife expecting in September and trying to wrap up a PhD, so all busy at the moment. Congratulations, that's your first, is it, on the way in September? Yeah, first on the way, yeah. So trying to get the house ready at the moment, so all excitement. I'd say it's a massive operation, as well as you say there, with the PhD and a busy time at work. There's a bit of a trickle away of the 2010 team now over the last couple of weeks. Obviously Donegal O'Connor a couple of weeks ago, and then for very unfortunate different reasons this week, Colm O'Neill retiring from the Cork setup. They're two massive losses to the setup, aren't they? Yeah, two massive losses. Donegal, I suppose, in fairness, an unbelievable leader and commitment to Cork football over the last 12, 13 years. It's hard to believe he's 37 years of age when you look at him. Even I was up at the Gaelic grounds last year seeing him against Mayo, and he was, for 40 minutes of that game, he was outstanding for a man that was 36 years of age, and he was just an unbelievably talented footballer and could always do it on the big day for Cork. And similarly Colm, look, it's sad for Colm. I suppose the body just gave up on him in the end. He had 3 cruciates, but I suppose the thing I'd always take from Colm is his resilience. He was, I've never heard Colm complain, which is a mark of the character he has. He just got on with it every time. He might be upset or down over it, but just got on with it, unbelievably positive. And again, on the pitch, he was awesome. He's just a complete baller. It was 2 great lads to play with. It strikes me that was sort of indicative of your squad, your great Cork team in general, that there was no complaining done, that other counties might be complaining about the fact that they had to play Kerry every single year, whereas he just got on with it and you ended up getting your All-Ireland medal in the end. Yeah, I suppose it's funny, we had a good blend from when I came in at the start. You had the kind of 26 or 7-year-olds, the Graham Cantys, Alan Quirks, Nicholas Murphys, who'd been through bad times and were still very hungry to win and try and win All-Ireland. And then you had a group of, say, our under-21s, kind of 15 lads maybe from over 4 or 5 years that had a lot of success at under-21 level and minor level and were hungry for success as well. And it was a nice blend. And I suppose both groups probably came together and leveraged off each other, and it just worked. There was a very decent, honest panel there that just did everything they could to try and win. What do you think has gone so badly wrong for them in the last 2 years? I think it's a number of things, really. It comes from county board down to grassroots. I think there's no one answer. I suppose it's very hard. There's been such change. I think at the back at 13, when Brian came in, you lost an awful lot of experience at the one time. You had the Graham Cantys and Alan Quirks and Pearson Neils, all these lads who were really good leaders and set a hugely strong culture there. And a bit of that was probably lost very quickly, and you had new lads coming in then that probably hadn't seen a culture like that and never got the feel of it. So I think, look, there was just a lack of culture there from at the really high top level that you need. In fairness, in Brian's 2 years, you could always argue that if you won the Munster final in 2015, you could say that could have been the springboard to take things up another level. And then I suppose it's been constant change ever since. I read an article from Donegal this morning, and he was talking about the strength and conditioning coaches. It's funny, like 5 years since Conor Coonan and a 6-year strength and conditioning team were there, and now we've had 5 different strength and conditioning coaches in the last 5 years, and all good coaches in their own right, but just constant change. There's been a huge turnover of the panel as well, and I suppose it's very hard then to set a culture, and because there's people learning their roles all the time, managers learning their roles, selectors learning their roles, players learning their roles. There's just no level of certainty or consistency there. Yeah. And you're kind of starting from scratch nearly every year, especially if you have a bad result at the end of the championship. You're kind of scratching your head saying, right, what are we going to do again this year? And it's a whole start again. Whereas you see with Kerry, they've Eamon Fitzmaurice there with the last 4 or 5 years, and like they know what they're about, and look, Cork just aren't there at the moment.
Yeah, there's certainly more of a process, it seems, in Kerry at the moment. Like, without being critical of any of the managers post Cuthbert, because like you look at Peter Healy, you look at Ronan McCarthy, they're probably both excellent managers, but ultimately the Cuthbert removal seems like, in hindsight, granted, not the smartest move from the Cork County Board at that moment in time, or Cuthbert's walking away, because you mentioned the 2015 Munster final there. Like, you probably were the better team in that first day in Killarney. A lot of you will say that you should have won that day, the dodgy penalty and all that. Like, it seems very, very quick the way that turns around, and maybe a little bit more trust with Brian Cuthbert, and that downfall could have been avoided. Yeah,
it's an interesting one, and I suppose trying to look back on it and remember the turn of events, what actually happened. I suppose Brian walked away, as far as I remember. He called it a day himself, but at the same time, there was a lot of negativity around the county in general. And do you know what? Any time I found in Connor's time as well, it was the same. When things are going badly, it's very easy to jump on the footballers. And there is a lot of talk around the counties and a lot of negative kind of energy. And like Ronan knows, at the start of a 3-year term, and 1 year in, and like I think they just have to back Ronan now for the next 2 years. And I think Ronan has acknowledged himself he's a lot of work to do and a lot of changes to be made to bring Cork up to a level where they're competing against all the teams. But yeah, I think you just need a level of consistency and a bit of certainty around players, the squad, try and build a culture. To compete again. Like, I suppose it's taken such a nosedive over the last couple of years that getting back to compete at a high level is what you have to do first. Yeah, like, it can happen very quickly the other way as well in terms of improvements. Like, you look at the hurlers, for example. I know that's a different kettle of fish, but 18 months ago, I certainly would have been thinking, God, wasn't it great in 2013 when the Cork hurlers were competitive? And then lo and behold, last summer, they go and win the Munster title. So it can turn very quickly, but you do need the public support. Yeah, and I just find in general that back then, when hurling wasn't going that well and when under pressure, there was an outcry from media, county board, the public, everyone. I don't feel the same urgency with the football. Okay. Which is a bit worrying. Like, you can see the management, obviously, Ronan obviously acknowledges, look, that this is an issue, but I don't know how collective as a Cork football entity will call it, county board, players, everyone, supporters, like, they realise how bad it's gone. It's obvious the results are there, but like, it needs a lot of work, or else, I think I read McFoley's article there, and like, he hit the nail on the head. If something isn't done kind of collectively on this, it'll go worse. So look, there's a big job there, and look, how do you fix it? There's a number of things, there's a number of facets to it. I think, first of all, if you take away from Cork senior football team, I think the county championships have kind of run its course in how they are currently. Like, you have a very uncompetitive county senior football championship in Cork, where you have 4 or 5 teams every year that are in the mix, and there's maybe 7 or 8 teams at the back end of it that are not going to win many games, and they're probably playing teams knowing they're going to get beaten by 10 or 15 points and be out of championship in 2 or 3 games. If you look at league, then the Division 1, so if you have 18 or 19 club teams, senior club teams, Division 1 of our league, there's only 8 senior club teams in it. So it's very hard for the talent and the quality to be lifted, because there's not enough competitive games in the club championship. So a lot of players, I would find, aren't battle hardened then, because you have the Nemos, the Bars, Ballincollig, Carby Rangers. These teams are playing each other once or twice a year, and then for other parts of the year, then they're playing club teams that they're better in. And there's just no level of competition there. Yeah, it seems like the very strength of Cork was based on, obviously, a big population, big numbers playing, but that's almost become its weakness, that this a huge pile of players isn't being utilised, that you may as well have a population of 40,000 people in Cork. Yeah, exactly. Like, you see, if you have 18 club teams, and then you've, I think, 8 divisions and colleges on top of that, and you know realistically that 6 or 7 teams have a chance of winning the county, there's no competitive edge there. Yeah. And a lot of teams are just, like, I'd imagine the Nemos and the Bars and these teams are only hitting the ground running in August when they need to get ready for championship. So you have a lot of teams not playing competitive quality games for a lot of the year. Like, you have some senior teams now in Division 4 or 5 of the league. Like, and I think there just needs to be a total reworking of how the championships and leagues are structured, so that you have level teams in terms of ability and competitiveness playing each other the whole time, so they can improve. If Cork County Board were to ask somebody like yourself to get involved at kind of an overseeing developmental level, would you answer the call? suppose I'm after raising the point now, so I couldn't say no. Like you'd seen, I think Dunick had mentioned it as well in his article. Pat Kelly, I know, has been saying it.
Because you're the guys who've won the All Ireland. You know, you're the guys who've seen the level you need to get to get to the very top.
And like I think it does need to be looked at, and I don't think it's a huge effort to rejig the championship. Like I would say, having the same amount of teams in every grade should be a start, and trying to have them as competitive as possible. Maybe having the leagues feeding into the seedings for the county championship, something like that. But I'm not sure if the county board are working it. Maybe they are, but I think it could be improved, and it could benefit the senior, under 21 and minor squads to have these good players playing competitive games week in, week out before they come in to the Cork setups.
Yeah, it seems like common sense, and I think it seems like something that the whole county wants to see happen, or the whole country rather wants to see happen, because like Cork has an extra element of glamour to it. Like I hate to bring it back to the hurlers again, but even seeing the pitch invasion in the Munster final last year was like, God, you forget how important they are, the colour they bring to the summer and all that.
And the scenes with the hurlers with the last 2 years have been brilliant for Cork hurling, and like I remember times when playing in Clarny with 40,000 people there and going down to Clarny and knowing that this is going to be tit for tat and it's going to come down for the last couple of minutes. Like from the Cork senior football point of view, then I think they just need to get an identity of what sort of a team they are, what they want to achieve, a culture that, you know, puts Cork football first, and that's all that matters. Because I always think when you see the Kerrys and Dublins and the level of professionalism they have, it's very easy to be professional, and well, very easy is probably a bit of a throwaway comment, but it's easier to be professional when you're successful and you know what you're about. But you really need to be on your game when you're trying to get back up there after being there. So look, I think Ronan acknowledged that he has a lot of work to do in terms of, you know, getting his setup right, getting the players he wants in there right. But I think you need 30 lads that have just tunnel vision in terms of what they want to achieve for Cork football. And if players don't want to give that commitment, that's fine too. But just I think at the moment, I think Cork are in limbo in terms of how they want to play, the culture in there, and, you know, trying to get the best out of themselves out on the pitch.
Yeah, and if they want to try something out, now's the time to do it, really. There doesn't seem to be too much else to lose. Just on those games you mentioned, like going down to Killarney or Kerry coming up to E, and the massive occasions they were, it kind of really struck me this year that we didn't quite appreciate how amazing some of those games were. When you're talking like 05, even up all the way up to 2015, maybe barring 2014, I'm trying to think every other game in that decade was tit for tat.
Yeah, and it's still like, it's funny when you look back in your career and you're after retiring, it still irks me like that I never won in Killarney. I had about 4 or 5 draws down there, and never won there, and never lost there by more than a point or two. So, you know, it was really tit for tat. And then coming up to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and Kerry, knowing they're under pressure coming to Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and we probably having the upper hand there. They were great days, but I suppose Cork's challenge now and Ronan's challenge is to get Cork back to a competitive edge like that. And look, as we said, if things like you see with the hurling a couple of years ago, if you can just get a more collective approach from everyone inside Cork football, you can become competitive again in 12, 24 months if you get the players on the pitch that are fully committed and buy into whatever plan is in place.
Yeah, I did also, as a final point, want to ask you just about football in general at the moment and the style of play that we're seeing, because you've spoken about it previously, that 2012 was kind of the moment that you looked around against Donegal and Croke Park. You looked around the pitch and you thought to yourself, whoa, this is a different game to the game I'm used to. And maybe Cork, maybe Kerry to a certain extent, and teams outside of Ulster, Dublin have caught up, Mayo to a certain extent caught up over the last couple of years, but potentially Kerry and Cork hadn't quite reached that tactical nous that the likes of Donegal showed against E in 2012.
Yeah, I think so. Football is changing constantly. It's funny, I listen to all the analysts and they're saying that football has gone to the dogs, and if you still look at it, then Dublin are, you know, the best team in the country, but they play attacking football. So like attacking football probably still will win out. I think if you have a good enough attacking football team, it still will overcome these blanket defences and stuff. But I remember, you know, playing the Donegals, playing Tyrones the last couple of years, and thinking, as a corner forward anyway, it's been well publicised with a lot of lads that were very good finishers, that Colm was the same, that you're relying on 3 or 4 chances a game, and if you don't take those chances, you probably aren't going to have much of an impact on the game.
You've got to be more clutch.
Yeah, which is crazy for, you know, like back in the day, you'd have seen Donegal or Cullum or score 1-4-5 in a game and 1-4 or 1-3 of that from play. Like, that isn't really happening anymore.
No.
And look, it's a pity in many ways that, like, managers have got so tactically aware, because it's tactics, essentially defensive tactics, and trying to stifle other teams as opposed to go out and win games with attacking football. Yeah. And look, athleticism is through the roof, and that only aids this kind of defensive tactics and then breaking a pace like Galway do and Donegal do. And it's funny how there's just every team takes a different approach. But like, it still is refreshing to see Dublin. They have their defensive system in play, but generally they're still an attacking team. They push up on kickouts. They try and turn over the ball high up the pitch. And I think when they're left play, it is still a very impressive game to watch. And in fairness to Kerry try and do the same. They're still a kick-passing team. But I suppose, like, if you're a Carlow or a Cork, say no, and you're going to play Kerry, like, and you're thinking, we have to be set up really defensive here, or else we're not going to be in this game at half-time. And it's just, I suppose it highlights the gulf in class between the Division 1 teams and the Division 2 and 3 teams. There's a huge gulf there, and at the moment it only seems to be getting bigger.
Yeah, it's true. Just one final point then, because just to pick you up on what you said there in terms of scores from play, and being a former free taker yourself at Cork anyway, like, who are you looking at the moment as the best free taker in the country? Who's got that bottle? Because, of course, I'm not sure how long it took you to actually build up that level of confidence in yourself and that bottle, like doing something you did against the Hill in 2010.
Yeah. I suppose, look, Dean Rock is probably, has to be the best, really. If I look at it, he's just clutch. He doesn't seem to miss, as far as I can see. He missed one or two last day, but after the kick is gone, it's forgotten about, and the next one's over the bar.
Yeah.
He's just ice cool, and he can kick from both sides of the pitch as well, which not a lot of intercounty free takers are doing. They're usually just one side, but he's kicking off the ground, curling him in off his right on the opposite side of the pitch, and yeah, he's probably the most impressive.
How do you get that good? How do you get to that level?
I found for myself anyway, it was a head thing.
Yeah.
Like, you obviously practice as free takers, but I think at the end of the day it comes down to your routine and having a mental routine that you know that it's just about kicking a football, and that you do the same thing repetitively, that the scoreboard doesn't actually matter, that all you're trying to focus on, your routine is so solid in your mind that you're just focusing on kicking the ball the way you would kick every single ball regardless of the scoreline. That takes the pressure out of the kick then. Not sure if that's how Dean or those lads apply it, but that's what I would have generally done anyway.
And then on a very basic technical level, would you feel that you had all those skills before going into an inter-county setup? It's about kicking a ball off the ball enough times as a child to actually have that level of skill, and that when you come into the inter-county setup, it's all about...
In terms of general skills?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have found that. I'd have found that when I came into Cork, my right leg was for standing on.
Okay.
And it took me years to become, I'd say, competent on it, just to be able to turn on your right side and kick it. So yeah, I think that's another area where Cork need to improve. Skill execution under pressure from Cork is not what it should be. You see against Kerry there, the amount of mistakes under pressure because lads can't use their weak hand well enough or kick off their weak foot well enough, and that comes from grassroots though. It should be drilled into lads when they're 6-7 years of age that you use both feet. It was never drilled into me. And you see the likes of Colm O'Neill then, who was effortless off both feet. He obviously from a young age was just either told to do it or he did it naturally. But I think at inter-county level now, you see Dublin, they can do everything off both feet, right and left, and that's why they're so good. Yeah. That's why they're attacking wise, they're so good. They don't give the ball away because their skills are just down to a T.
Daniel Goulding looking in great shape there. Now, a reminder, OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. We'll be talking about the Galway women's football team in just a little while. We're bringing some news on Darren Till and his shot at a world title in just a couple of minutes' time as well. But tomorrow sees the release of a brilliant new documentary called Kaiser, the greatest footballer to never play footballer. Tom Markham is the producer of it and he's with us. Good morning to you, Tom. How you doing?
Morning, Ger.
How the hell did you find this story, Tom?
Well, that's a good question. A good friend of mine, Rob Fulham, who's an oil broker over here in London, another Dublin lads, he came to me with this story in 2013, and there was a quiet day in the oil markets, and effectively he found it on a Reddit forum, and it had been translated, 3 paragraphs that had been translated from Portuguese, and I looked at it and just thought, there's no way this story can be true. It just looks so embellished and so crazy. But it actually popped up again. We went to the World Cup in 2014. We were out with a lot of Brazilians that worked in the football industry, and 2 nights in the bounce, both groups independently said to us, like, this is the best story that's never been covered. So we decided to take a punt and make a film on it.
So you're making a documentary about a Brazilian footballer who wasn't really a footballer. Not an easy thing to do.
No. So the thing is, he is a con man, but he's sort of a lovable rogue. They have this term in Rio specifically, but in wider Brazil, called the malandro. And a malandro is effectively a chancer, but a chancer that people have a lot of respect for. There's almost more respect because of the culture over there for someone who makes it when they haven't worked that hard versus someone who actually makes it when they do work hard.
So you're in Brazil and you've read these 3 paragraphs on Reddit, and you get to Brazil and people are telling you that this is a real thing, that this guy is a real character. But how do you actually go about finding somebody and convincing them to be involved in a story that maybe when the documentary gets made doesn't paint them in a great light?
Well, how we found him is an interesting one as well, because 2 friends of mine that I was in university with have an agency in Brazil. So they said they could get to this guy. So we asked all the obvious questions, whether he was still alive, you know, whether he'd sold the story, whether anything had been done on him in the past. And we actually verified all this with Tim Vickery. So he was very important to the story initially. And we met Tim here in London. He happened to be in London at the time, and this was 2015. And the director of the film, Louis, turned around to Tim, and they both worked together at the BBC. And he just said to him, you know, tell us what you know about Carlos Enrique Raposo, a.k.a. Kaiser. And Tim turned around and he said, I've lived in Rio for 18 years. Not only is this the best football story I've ever come across, it's actually the best story. So that's when we decided to move on this. We put together a small crew, and probably 6 weeks later, we were en route to Rio. Louis, the director, and 2 DOPs, Steve and Will. And we were trying to obviously track down this con man to tell the story. So it could have gone very badly. It could have been the most expensive holiday I'd ever had, but luckily it turned out pretty well. And 7 trips later to Brazil, we actually did 72 interviews. And the beauty of this story is you know, on the surface of it, it sounds great. It's all of our dreams to make it as a professional footballer, and this guy did it in the hardest place to make it, in a golden era when you know, all of the best Brazilian footballers were still playing at home at that stage. But to put it in perspective, he became friends with 2 generations of the best players. So anyone from Carlos Alberto Torres, captain of the 1970 World Cup winning team, right through to the players from the 94 team, people like Bebeto Romario, Ricardo Rocha. These were his best friends.
That is the kind of Forrest Gump element of all this, that he has a front row seat for Brazilian football history during that great resurgence of Brazilian football. So maybe just tell people a little bit about the story without obviously giving away too much. We're going to show the trailer at the end of this, so whatever's in the trailer is fair game.
Absolutely. Well, the one thing is, the story, it's actually so deep, Ger, but on the surface, this guy managed to blag a 26-year professional football career at the best teams in Brazil. So we're talking Flamengo, Botafogo, Vasco da Gama, Independiente in Argentina, who beat Barcelona in the World Club Championship that year, Puebla in Mexico, Ajaccio in France. And so that's it on the surface. But he also managed to swindle some of the mafia bosses that owned some of these big clubs in Brazil. And the story was so deep that probably on the second trip, we realized it was either going to be an O.J. Simpson-style doc and go on for 10, 12 hours, or else we were going to write a book. So we actually got Rob Smythe from The Guardian, who's written the book as well, which is coming out tomorrow, because when people see the film, there's more questions than answers.
That's one thing that certainly stuck out to me, and it's great. And I don't want to give away anything at the end there, but obviously there is a bit of a twist, certainly, with the way the audience views Kaiser near the end. And it certainly seems to me it's important to point out the multiple different interviews. And I do wonder how long it took for you guys to actually break down Kaiser, to actually peel away at a couple of layers to the point where we have this human at the end. And again, I'm not going to give away what happens, but we have a very different character and a very different relationship with Kaiser at the end. How long did that take?
It took nearly 2 years to do that. So when we met him, he's a very, very charismatic guy. He's obviously someone who can manipulate situations to get what he wants. So initially he thought it was the world according to Kaiser. And the beauty of this story is probably 50-60% of it's true. No one really knows the exact number, but you don't know which half is true. So, and you've got people that are contradicting each other the whole way through the story. So it's almost up to you to make up your own mind. And we've had the full perspective on that. People who believe nothing, people who believe everything, and that creates a lot of debate.
It's interesting as well when you think about it, and like at the start, particularly when you explore the sort of misogynistic element to Kaiser's character, there is an element of dislikability about him, but the more you think about it, the more the telling of the Kaiser story is the perfect telling of the Rio story and the representation that he provides of that era and how much of a product of that environment Kaiser is.
Yeah, and I think that was something that was very important to us, to almost tell the story as we found it. We didn't want to manipulate it in any way. We wanted to just show that. And that was a little bit of an issue because obviously the film industry in particular was going through such a bad period with the Harvey Weinstein scandal and everything else. So to be able to touch on this, and obviously Rio in the 80s was quite a sex-charged place. Kaiser and footballers, you know, they had that type of lifestyle. So obviously it was difficult to actually tell that story the way we found it and the way that really happened, but not offend people that obviously, you know, have been involved in the industry and it's slightly different circumstances because everything was consensual that happened. It might have been based on a lie, whereas, you know, the Weinstein situation was completely different to that.
Tom, to spool it back a little bit, how did he actually manage to get his first job? Like, was he an average footballer at some point? Did he show any athletic prowess? Was he banging in goals as a kid? Where does the con begin?
Yeah, so the con, he's from Botafogo and he ended up in the Botafogo Academy as a kid. He was always very athletic, very fit. And that's what paid off in later life. So he became this sort of almost mythical character in Rio. Carlos Alberto Torres said in an interview that Kaiser in the 1980s had more influence on Rio society than he did. So that's the sort of level that we're talking about. And that was verified by his son, who played, well, for a variety of teams, Alexander Torres, but including under Arsene Wenger in Japan. And to hear that is just crazy, given, you know, the magnitude of the character that Carlos Alberto is. But Kaiser, he's just, in later life, I think a lot of the players were in on his whole, let's just say, con. So, for example, Bebeto takes him to Flamengo, and Carlos Alberto is the manager at the time. So, you know, you're going to the biggest club in South America. And the fact that you can even just rock up for pre-season is a little bit mind-boggling. But you have to remember that era, these guys were all playing football with their mates down on the beach. So even though it's just a completely different era and the skill set was still there, but Kaiser was much fitter than most of these players. He's now a fitness trainer that only trains women. So like you cannot write this story. We brought this into to Sony. And the girl that we were speaking to there just said if someone brought this as a script, they'd just get laughed straight off the stage, that it is stranger than fiction.
So where can people actually see it, Tom? What's the distribution mechanism?
Yeah, good question, Ger. So from an Irish perspective, we've actually been a little bit hamstrung in that we've got Mission Impossible 49 or whatever number it is coming out this week, and we've got Mamma Mia. The cinema industry seem to want to take the safe bets, but luckily enough, we got into Tribeca with this film. It was higher rated in The Guardian than Icarus that won the Oscar last year. So we're really happy the way everything is developed. But At the moment, there's only 2 screens in view Liffey Valley this Sunday where you can see it, but we're hoping to get more Irish dates. Our distributor is on that case at the moment. It will be released digitally, over probably in the next, I'd say, 6 to 8 weeks as well. So people will be able to see it that way. But yeah, that element, we've been a little bit disappointed. We've managed to get quite a lot of screens in the UK, but I'd like for people to be able to see it at home as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's absolutely brilliant. And it did strike me, Tom, that this is a massive shift in career for you. We've obviously had you on the show before talking about the various aspects of your professional sports life, which is involved in football administration and also, of course, with Championship Manager, Football Manager, and as some people might know it. The decision to suddenly become a film producer is like a massive quantum leap, but you're kind of doing it as a nice little hobby and sideline, and suddenly you've made this world-class documentary.
Well, thanks, Ger. But it was almost too good an opportunity to turn down. So that's why effectively all of my holidays for the last 2.5, 3 years I've spent, fair enough, I've gone to Brazil, but we've actually had to work quite hard down there to get this done with a very small team. We're delighted with the way it's turned out. Obviously the book we're really, really happy with as well. Rob's done an amazing job on that. And we've actually had a few offers to do some dramatisation of the story as well. So we've had 2 offers for a series and 2 offers for a Hollywood-style movie as well. So but we just want to get the doc going first and to make sure that people get to see this incredible story.
You've got some props for us.
I do, actually, yeah. So this is one of Kaiser's Bangu shirts from back in the day. So Bangu is actually where, and this is a newer one that he signed. He loves to give people signed shirts. But Bangu was actually the scene of the first ever football match in Brazil, and it was a Scottish missionary who actually brought football to Brazil. But Kaiser played there in the mid-'80s, and it was owned by a mafia boss called Castor de Andrade at the time, who was the biggest sort of crime boss in Brazil. And they did a Leicester City in 1985. They got to the final of the Brazilian League. It was a round robin competition at that stage, and they lost on a penalty shootout. But he had obviously washed a lot of his money through this club, and they had some of the best players in Brazil at the time, and Kaiser was there sitting on the bench.
Is Kaiser rich at the end of this?
No, and the thing is, Kaiser has never really had money, or the way he got through all of this. He's lived this high society lifestyle, rubbing shoulders with politicians, actors, mafia bosses, footballers, and he's done it in a very clever way. Because he had such a good relationship and was loved by so many of these people, he would take, say, Zico, for example, and Zico and his wife would go to a restaurant. Kaiser would obviously know the guy who runs the restaurant, bring along his girlfriend at the time, and because he's brought Zico to the restaurant, he doesn't have to pay for anything because it's obviously free advertising, and this is the way he lived his life. So he would almost arrange these different things and get something out of it for himself, and he even did that with the media. So he had relationships with all the journalists in Brazil, and because he knew all the players so well, it was easier to get an interview with a Romario or an Edmundo, for example, through Kaiser than it was to get it through the press, management at the club. So he would arrange that with the player at a time that suited them, and then the journalists would owe him favours, so they'd be writing articles about him when required. He ended up as a pundit on the Brazilian equivalent of Match of the Day, which you'll see in the film as well. And there was another clip that doesn't feature in the film, but he was very good friends with Edmundo, as I mentioned. And there was a goal of the month competition that was decided in the studio. And Kaiser had the casting vote and obviously gave it to Edmundo. And Edmundo won a car on the back of all of this. And obviously he was a good mate of his.
It's handy how things always work out for the Conman. Tom, congratulations on the movie. It's brilliant. Well done. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Thanks a million, guys. Cheers.
Dr. Tom Markham there. You can follow him on Twitter at TMFootyFinance. And as he said, it's in Liffey Valley. We'll show you the trailer now. Have a look.
Eu entrei nesse documentário para ser sincero.
O Júnior manda direto. Futebol brasileiro é aquele futebol áspero. Tecnicamente é fantástico.
Pelé dominou, Carlos Alberto está livre, correu, Carlinhos, atirou, gol!
Nós temos aí grandes exemplos, né, de jogadores excepcionais. Diariamente, vamos dizer assim, apareceu uma pessoa como o Kaiser.
O Kaiser é uma das figuras mais emblemáticas do futebol mundial. Ele era único só. A bola.
Acho que é o único cidadão do planeta que, durante 26 anos, jogou futebol sem colocar uma chuteira no pé.
Essa história de um não jogador de futebol, não joguei, não fiz um gol, não dei um chute.
Ele deu 2 piques e sentiu aí. Botou a mão na perna, pediu pra sair.
Há festas, como o primeiro-ministro italiano lá, com muitas orgias.
O Carlos Kaiser é jogador de futebol. Aí tô vendo na televisão, Kaiser tá nova contratação depois. Ah, não acredito que ele tá em outro clube lá.
Tu vê a pessoa dar uma volta no mais perigoso do Brasil.
O divertimento é sexo, é uma doença, como Michael Douglas dizem que tem.
Ele foi o maior jogador de futebol, nunca teve jogado de futebol. Imbatível.
Yeah, just prepare yourself mentally for a lot of shots of small yellow speedos, budgie smugglers.
Like from minute one.
Yeah. I was watching it at work. I was like, maybe I should watch this at home.
Yes. I was watching on the bus. I was like, maybe I should definitely not be watching this on the bus. Like, who's the weird guy there with the constant loop of yellow speedos on the screen?
That's Owen Sheehan, at Owen Sheehan on Twitter. All right, so it was confirmed overnight that Darren Till will fight Tyron Woodley for the UFC welterweight title in Dallas on the 8th of September. We spoke to him on Saturday night about the fight.
If he's not willing and ready, here comes your man. I'm number 2 in the rankings. So obviously the UFC are going to offer me. Not that I give a shit, but I am number 2. The UFC are going to come to me. They see me as a bright young, you know.
So they have come to you then?
Yeah, of course they have. Yeah, they've offered me the fight. So, you know, it's not on me, my part now, mate. It's not on my part. Do you know what I mean? It's not. There's no contract being put to me, but I've been offered the fight. So to me, that's. I'm not going to second think. I'm not going to go, oh, let me have a think about that and gone, I've got 10 weeks to fight the champion, or I'm not going to go, oh shit, there's this or that. You know, if I was injured or if it was a sickness, I'd be like, you know what, I'm sick, can we wait? Or, you know, if I was injured, I'd be like, oh yeah, like, but I'm okay, I'm here. So, this is down to Tyron. He can say who he wants to fight. Just come out and say who you want to fight. Like, his tweet back was like, I thought Queefington or some shit like that was getting a shot. No, you don't think anything. You are the champion. You can decide, mate. Like, at the end of the day, we're all chasing the title, aren't we? We're all wanting to be the best. We're all wanting to... Tyron is the top guy. It's not a case of I'm the best or he's the best. I know I'm the best fighter in the world, but Tyron Woodley is the champion, so he can pick he's got the key, not me, not fucking anyone else. It's Tyron Woodley is shall we say, right now the king of that division. Why is he the king? Because he's the fucking champion.
Yeah, Darren Till there in conversation with Niall McGrath. You can watch that whole thing on youtube.com/offtheball. A very good place to hit the button subscribe, because that way, whenever we do good stuff like that, you'll get to see the whole thing, and you can watch the extended version of that. He's a very compelling character, Darren Till. You would expect he's going to lose that fight, I think, against Tyron Woodley.
It's going to be very tough. I mean, when you think about global superstars at a sport, Tyron Woodley is somebody that would be at the tip of the tongue of everybody. But Darren Till is going that way. Like, there's no question about that. He's rising and rising, and you do wonder, will he get a big scalp like this before things wind up for him? And I think we've had him on the show a couple of times. Joe obviously went over and did a piece with him in Manchester a couple of months back. So I'm starting to feel, he's getting to the point where he's a friend of the show and we're going to support him.
Tyrone Woodley 6-4 on. Darren Till 11-10.
Right, okay. So he's not as much of an outsider as we might suspect. That's... So when's this on? This is...
September the 8th. 9th. The 9th in Ireland, the 8th in Vegas, baby.
Of course, Tyrone Woodley fought. He was like the headline of the undercard in the last Conor McGregor fight, or maybe 2 Conor McGregor fights previously. So
that's a long time ago now, though.
That's a long time ago now. I wonder, has Woodley fought upwards of 2-3 times since then? Probably.
Got to roll through some more quick videos for you. Here's Jackie Tyrrell's take on the 2018 Hurling Championship. You can watch this full thing back on youtube.com/offtheball. Or, of course, you can get it on our podcast. Just go to GAA on Off the Ball. You can search that wherever you get your podcasts.
It's been a brilliant year, Joe. It's very hard to go, God, it's better than this year. It's not, because when you're caught in the middle of it and the games are coming thick and fast, it's hard not to think that this is the best year, but it's just been unbelievable. And the quality of player that we have at watching at the minute is just unbelievable. And the great thing about the round robin thing was each individual weekend, like if you were living anywhere in the Midlands, God, will I go down and watch Kilkenny and Wexford in the park? Will I go to Thurles and watch Tip and Waterford or something? It's just unbelievable. Quality of games have been through the roof. And for me, like, some of the defending I thought was unbelievable this year. In a game that's gone so fast, and teams that defended with sweepers without it, I just thought the quality of defenders that we're producing now at the minute are really up there.
So what kind of things are you seeing from the defenders that you like?
Just some brilliant simple things so well, like body positioning, blocking down. I love 2 guys going at it when it's just 50-50. Daithí Burke and Wally Welsh were going at it there in the Leinster final. Like, I can't wait for John Conlon and Daithí Burke this year. I'd walk on nails from Kilkenny to go apart to watch it. I just think it's going to be... it's just going to be warrior, and I just hope that they hold the 2 of them in there. They don't pull John Conlon out like that. It's just... I'm thinking about it a lot. Some days I think Daithí Burke is going to win it. Sometimes I think John Conlon is going to win it.
It could both ways. It could be a draw. Yeah.
Go another 30 yards out the field and you've a giant in Garrod McInerney against Tony Kelly, who's probably a quarter of his size. How's that going to go? I just think the game is in a really good place at that top level, and the level of hurler we're producing is just brilliant.
A quick one here. Hugh Paddy O'Byrne on Twitter. I really enjoy Addo and Sheehan on Off the Ball, but
oh no, what's this going to be?
Having just seen his profile pic, I have to wonder why the footwear, or more importantly, why the pineapple?
That's a long story. I'm glad you asked. Maybe one day I'll tell the story.
Well, I mean, no time like the present.
It was. I do need to change that. So thanks for that. Thanks for the reminder, and thanks for letting me know that.
Okay. So like you're a child in this picture. This is about 5 years ago.
No, it's only 3 years ago.
Is it?
Have I aged that much in 3 years?
You've got different hair colour.
Do I?
Yeah, it's much darker there. It looks like you've dyed it.
Well, it's probably just a different time of the year. The hair colour comes out a lot more when the sun is shining, Ger.
There's a pineapple in your right hand, and is it like an old phone in your left?
Yeah, Blockia. Yeah,
right,
it's a Blockia in my left hand. There's a few layers to the story. I might tell it some time. It's not a particularly exciting one. I'm not going to bore people with the details.
I mean, that's kind of... At some point you will bore them with the details.
I did just say that, yeah. But I can do it far more. No, it was... It was just before I finished college. It was like a charity event where...
you had to bring a pineapple across town.
Well, that was the last... kind of step in the mission. It was one of those things, like one of those classic MTV reality TV shows where 30 people get dropped at a remote location. They've got to find their way back to wherever it may be without any internet, without any money, without any cash. So whoever could blag their way back from a secret location in Ireland all the way back to Dublin would be the winner. But there was a couple of things you had to do on the way. You had to get a football, paint, the thing from Castaways, the name escapes me. Have you not seen Castaway? Oh my God, the red hand. Wilson.
Oh, sorry.
Paint the Wilson hand on a ball, deliver that somewhere, and get a pineapple, deliver that somewhere. No internet, no cash, and it ended up being a point where, like, you didn't know where you were getting dropped off. You were like blindfolded and brought down there, and it ended up being a beach in Wexford.
Right.
And we won. We won. So there was like about 20 teams, and that's why there was pineapple in my hand.
What did you win?
Oh, geez, I actually can't remember. It must have been a fantastic prize. I actually can't remember. Pride is what I won.
Love and respect of your colleagues.
The respect is still flowing, as you can see, by that kind commenter complimenting me on my profile picture.
There you go. All right, Patrick Horgan, what are the stories of the summer so far? Here he is talking about the importance of Anthony Nash.
Nah, he never has him. He doesn't. No, we know we've like same way he has with everyone else on the team. We've complete trust in anyone on the panel to do a job if we ask him to do it, and he's no different. He's just on the panel, and we know about like anything that happens in a game. We know he's well able to take it on, and same as anyone else on the panel, they can all do the job.
What happens if he's injured, touch wood, and he has to come off? Then what? Does the game plan go out the window, or have you planned for that too?
No, the exact same thing will happen with Pat Collins. He'll come in and he'll do the same job as we'd expect it. It's why he's there. It's why everyone is there. Like, you know, 'cause we're good enough to play at that level, and he'll come on and do the same. But Nash should be alright. He's made of concrete.
All right. So a couple of things to tell you about. Andy Mitten is talking Manchester United and Jose Mourinho on the show on the radio tonight from 7 o'clock. We're back tomorrow morning from 7:45 AM. But before we go, Maura Trassick got to spend some time with the Galway women's football team. They've been having a pretty brilliant year so far. Some brilliant stuff in this, so enjoy. Good luck.
We had a good run of the league. I suppose the Dublin game probably was initially it was disheartening, but I think as we look back, there's a lot of positives to take from it. I suppose in the last few years, the team, we haven't got a consistent run of the league, and I think this year probably was the first year that we did. The continuity management, continuity in the group of players there has been massive. I think stuff that's been worked on last year has needed to be worked on this year again, and I think there's a core bunch there that we've been there for a while now and probably haven't had much success. And you know, kind of years are ticking on, age is moving, and you're kind of going to look back at your career and what have you won and what have you done, and up to now I suppose in Galway we haven't won a whole lot.
I'd say we're a little bit bonkers probably. Yeah. Like you kind of have to be a bit mad to literally if you want to do well, put your whole life aside for the cause. So I think, you know, you can't meet up with friends or go for a drink whenever you want. It's all dependent on your training schedule, yeah. Especially if you want to do well and take it seriously.
Like it does, like everything else takes a backseat, and you know, to be in with the best or hoping to be up there with the best, that's what it's going to take, and it's definitely worth it. You know, provided everyone's on the same page and things like that, and are willing to give the same commitment. And I think that's something that even Tracy was saying about the group of players we have. It's like, it is great to see the commitment levels are just brilliant, you know, and it makes everybody else just strive that little bit harder and push and make the sacrifices, not just for yourself but for everyone around you. So it is.
It's a new format of the championship this year. I think will definitely benefit us, because I suppose in the last few years we've just played Mayo and then we went into maybe a quarter final or a qualifier. After that, your championship could be over, done and dusted after 2 games. You do a lot of training for just 2 games. So I think with the way it's running this year, I think with us having a round robin group stages, at least we're going to get 2, if not 3 good games, and hopefully go from there. But like, you know, Cork were there for years, and Dublin tried, you know, they were there knocking on the door, and it just has shown that, you know, that extra few percentages that Dublin obviously went on and looked for and have got, they have got over the line. So, you know, it kind of is encouraging to see, you know, they have come over Cork, because looking at Cork in the last few years, you thought, geez, these are unbeatable. But, you know, you've seen what Dublin have done, and it just takes literally hard work and training times that you put in. But, like, I've no doubt, like, the bunch of girls that are there this year, you know, the hard work is being put in, sacrifices are being made, commitments are being made.
We're working really hard. We've been training since last November, and well, I suppose it is a 2-year process. So we've been working severely hard, and we want to try and keep building on that. And yeah, we know that we're up there. Obviously, when we bet Dublin one day, lost by a point the next, but we're definitely up there. And I think it's about time that Galway need to now perform. Like, if you come down here during the week here to Loch George, like, we're training so well. The quality of standard, the matches and everything is so good, but we just need to kind of transpire that onto it.
I think standards in coaching and training and things like that have increased nationally. So I think it's bringing teams a lot closer. It really is down to the fine margins, with your strength and conditioning, your nutrition, your psychology. You have a massive backroom squad that wouldn't have been there before, and even the girls, you're here half an hour, 40 minutes before training individual work. And I think that's, widespread across the nation, and everyone is putting in that effort. And I think that's brought up the level of the game, and also underage development as well has been huge, and that's coming through, and it's bringing everyone almost at a par. So then it's making the competition a lot more competitive.
I suppose we've had so much underage success and so much success at a school level as well. It's kind of hard to know why, what's the problem with the transition from underage to senior level. Hopefully we can turn it around. I think we've been getting closer and closer. Sometimes there was a little bit of luck on the day that we missed out.
So please God that we can keep everyone in that mindset and just waiting patiently, and our day will come.
OTB AM. Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.